Liz Moyle was on with our Rhonda Schaffler this week, and she said that the state is anticipating over 20 and 21 a $10 billion shortfall. $10 billion on a $40 billion budget. That seems like a catastrophe waiting to happen. Now, our John Reitmeyer of NJ Spotlight said that it may not be exactly 10 billion, but even if it's 5 billion, that's a big chunk out of a state budget. What are you guys going to do about that?
Well, first, we're going to hope Senator Menendez is successful in his efforts to ensure states and government and county and local governments get help, because it's not a red state, blue state. We got a lot of states in this position right now. And just like when we got hit with Sandy, money came into this state to help us rebuild. We're going to need help, and not to pay our legacy costs. We got to deal with our pensions. We got, our legacy cost issues are our legacy cost issues. But there's no way any state's going to be able to survive without assistance.
Let's say that doesn't happen, or that it doesn't happen to the extent that you would like to see. A couple of things. One, are we going to see cuts in services and the cuts in terms of the number of state employees and higher taxes? Which of those wonderful options are you going to commit to?
Well, one thing I'm pretty happy about, it was yesterday we passed the furlough bill we were talking about. And hopefully the governor will sign it pretty quick to give local governments the option. Look, if Governor Murphy chooses not to, take advantage of the furlough program, I can tell you, we've talked to school districts, towns, counties that absolutely are looking towards trying to get into that furlough program. David, look, we're going to have to look at borrowing. But my point is, if we're going to borrow, when you borrow, you got to pay it back. I want to know how we're going to pay it back, what we're going to pay it back. And oh, by the way, when we go and borrow money, we're going to get a downgrading, at least one, if not more. And that's going to put us, we'll be the second state in the country with a B rating, B bond rating. And that's heartbreaking, because at one point this state had a AAA bond rating.
And what that means is, like, it's your credit score. If you have a really low credit score, you try and get a loan, you're going to pay a higher interest rate.
Yeah, David, I've actually suggested that if we do have to borrow money from governments, we look at county governments like Essex that has a AAA bond rating and go through them to try to reduce the cost of borrowing. Then the state pay them back. Because look, we got to find ways to prevent us from getting another downgrade, because that's just you're paying more and getting less.
One of the questions here, I guess you kind of touched on it, was why did you come out immediately against the borrowing plan that the governor announced?
I didn't come out against it at all. What I said was, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know how much I'm going to borrow. David, so when you ask me a question and you say, why did you borrow $5 billion? I said, because that's what the governor told me I needed to borrow. Well, what did he show you? Nothing. Well, what's it going to go for? I don't know. Remember the Abbott and Costello one? Who's on first? Well, that's where we were headed with this. David, I'm open to borrowing. But I need to know where I'm going. I need to know, are we borrowing the right amount of money? And listen, and it's a guess. So you can't hold the administration if they're off by a little bit. But guess what? I want to know where I'm going, what taxes I'm raising. Because when you do a general obligation bond, David, the first tax that's listed on a general obligation bond is sales tax. And do we want to raise sales taxes on people at this time? You're talking about people that are out of work. We're going to increase sales tax. And I'm not talking about 7%. I'm talking about, if you're talking to billions of dollars, you're talking, 8, 9%.
Did you run that idea by him, the one you had about borrowing through the counties?
I mentioned it.
That's something I noticed with Essex County when they borrowed money for their lead
water problem. Yeah. And David, our counties have AAA and AA bond ratings where we have a real low bond rating. So why wouldn't we utilize, if we could, borrow as much out from these counties as we can and pay the counties back?